Hello, everybody. Oh, I think we got it. All right. Hello, everybody. We'll give a couple of moments to let people jump on that are going to join us live today. And if you are watching the recording, don't forget to say hello in there because I watch all the comments and, let's have some feedback and hear what everyone has to say. So go ahead and you can let me know that you're there and where you're coming in from. And I'm just going to see if I can get the comments to work today. My usual. There we go. All right. And it's such a every so often I can get everything to work and then the next time it doesn't. And it's like I'm not sure what I did wrong. So then I don't know how to make the comments work. And then we'll finish and all of a sudden there'll be a ton of comments there and people are trying to say hello to me. So you'll see if I give it a couple of chances here to pop in and see something. So if you are there, then let me know so that I can hopefully interact with you, because that's my favorite part of doing these is actually chatting with you guys and interacting and getting to make this two ways. Let's see if we go there. We'll see if that is gonna work. Ha! Hello, Audrey. Yay! Okay, perfect. And it's perfect because actually Audrey was with me in Greece, and so this is my first time coming back live since we got home. And it was a phenomenal experience, which is why today we are going to start talking about integration and what that looks like. Because right before I left, we actually did the unlearning boot camp. And I literally left, like we finished the unlearning boot camp, I finished the day, and then we left. And so it's been fantastic. But I had really believed that the whole time I was gone, I was going to be doing, Facebook Lives in the group, and I was going to be posting, and I was going to be there for a work trip for doing this and writing on my book. And I literally got on the plane, and it was like everything just, it's not that it shut down, but it got super, super quiet. And it was like, pause, stop. And so when we got there, it took 2 days to get to the retreat. We were on this beautiful island of Amargos with our coach. Audrey and I both have the same coach from the same Oracle group. And we were with our coach, and there was 14 of us all together. And it was beautiful. So 14 women. And this is my first time ever being to a retreat like that. And so I had gone through a whole bunch of really fascinating emotions leaving. So guilt for leaving my husband, for leaving him with our animals, for spending that much money on myself. I felt, guilt for leaving the crew at work. So I was going through all these things, and I was feeling a lot of anxiety because I haven't actually traveled by myself in like 15 years. And so even when I traveled without my husband, it was always for work, and it was always with like either my team, or if I was leaving with my girlfriends for a weekend, then it'd be something like that, but not anything really like leaving. And so it brought up a whole bunch of emotions in me. So when I got on the plane, and it was 24 hours to fly to Athens, and then, actually to Santorini, and then the next day we traveled across to get to Amorgos, and it was a boat ride that was not lovely. I'm very sick. And then we finally got there after a really not friendly bus ride. And then we're on this place in this gorgeous land, and everything got quiet. And all of a sudden, I went from like having all of these expectations of myself, of, showing up on social media and doing all of this stuff with you guys, and everything just was like stillness. And I was okay with it, but I could feel my ego and everything expecting that I needed to do these things. And instead, I just kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And so the longer that I was there, the more grounded I was becoming. And yet I was feeling extremely expanded at the same time. And it was my first time feeling it at that level, to feel deeply, deeply connected and super, super expanded, and just to watch and to be super present with everything that was coming up. And the words that had come through while I was traveling there were embodiment and then expansion. And if you know some of my story, I've struggled with this last little phase with coming in. Well, I've struggled with each phase because I'm a recovering control freak. And so I have been trying to just like let go and do a surrender experiment for 7 years. And every time I think like, nailed it, it is like, watch this. So it is a real dance with me and the universe of like learning how to co-create, and in that co-creation really softening into what's happening. And so, my mom passed in January, and then in February I had this awakening where it was like, you need to step into your next role. And I really needed to be able to heal with my mom and release a bunch of pieces so that I could step into the role of the Contrarian soul guide. And within that, I love that languaging better than the other languaging that came right behind that, which was as a spiritual coach and to be a spiritual teacher and a spiritual guide. And it was like, oh, I really like when we do it this way because I can use the science. I can talk quantum physics, I can talk neuro, I can talk all these other things that allow me to stay a little in the closet in the spiritual. Even though I play within the woo-woo, the spiritual piece is a whole nother genre. And so I was really uncomfortable. And I've been a certified spiritual director for over 5 years, and I have never promoted it. A few times I've put it up and then I've taken it back down because I'm like, ugh. And I've really struggled with how to describe myself as a coach, as a teacher, as an energy worker. And as we were there, it was like these pieces kept coming up, and Audrey was with me, and we were in this circle, and I was asked, what's your question that you're bringing here? And I realized, I was still really struggling with this role in terms of being worried that my ego would get involved and I would do harm. And I think that's because there's been so many spiritual teachers over the last, since the beginning really, that have harmed other people. We've seen it within religion. We've seen it within even, the yoga community with Bikram. So a lot of these people that have come forward as a spiritual teacher have then ended up, doing harm, whether that is, infidelities, whether that is, misbehaving within the moral world. It's been a struggle. And so I had these real concerns. And every time I would get a reading done or have my Akashic records done, it kept coming forward that I was a channel of divine power. And that really made me uncomfortable. And so here I was at this retreat, and I was like, you just need to expand. And so the words were coming through with it. And I was really like, how do I allow this to happen and yet keep my ego in check? And Sarah, our beautiful coach, was like, what if you stopped fighting and you started trusting? And I hadn't realized I'd been fighting inside myself to do these pieces. And I was really, really struggling to try and fight this thing inside of me that I couldn't put words into. And I think many of us get here is we're doing this work, we want to expand, we want to know more, and then we're like, oh, am I being egoic? Am I being, arrogant? And these pieces can come up. And so how do we stay super grounded as we're alchemizing, as we're shifting from this person that we were into this person that we are becoming or remembering? So we're tearing away all of the garbage, all the lies that we have believed, that I'm my past experiences, that not only the things that have happened to me, but the things that I've done. And I'm not. And neither are you. And, I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my emotions. And as we're letting these pieces go, it can be really terrifying. Because those are things that we know. And even if they're painful, we still know them. And so, when we look at how the brain works, how the amygdala works, it looks to be supported in its belief. So if I believe that I'm unworthy of this, then my brain will automatically seek proof that I'm unworthy of this. And so what happens is often we go into these big retreats, or we do something like the unlearning boot camp that we did right before I left, and we're unlearning and we're like figuring these things out. And then there's this moment where it's like, I'm wearing the wrong skin. And how do I explain what's happening? And so as we were there, I was going through all of these shifts and I didn't know how to explain it to anybody. You know, people would be like, oh, you're like super grounded. And I was like, I don't know how to explain it to you. I feel like super connected and super expanded at the same time. But if I put words to it, I almost lose it. And so I was like just getting stiller and stiller and stiller while we were there. And I was surrounded by these beautiful women. And I mean, I created this community because it was something I needed. I needed people that wanted to talk spiritual stuff. I wanted people that were like, let's talk oracle cards. Let's talk, like we pulled oracle cards while we were there. And, you know, everybody, whether they were, you know, lawyers or CEOs, they were like, yeah, I want to pull an oracle card. And I was like, this is so cool. We were surrounded by people that were totally into it, like even to explore and to play. And so it was like this beautiful opportunity to connect. And I realized the greatest thing that happened while I was there was the community. All of a sudden we were with these amazing, or I was with these amazing people, that there wasn't competition. And when it was like, you know, our own inner struggles of like, oh, you know, they're doing it better, so, you know, maybe I'm not as good. But instead it was like we could have these huge conversations that usually you would try and hide. And we weren't. We were just having beautiful conversation, and every single person was lifting the other people up. And that was exactly what I wanted in this community, was this ability to create such a beautiful community. Oh yes, absolutely, Audrey. I'm so glad that you jumped on. We'll talk soon. And good luck on the podcast. So we were like in this beautiful, beautiful community of just being with each other and holding each other's hearts. And then you start coming back. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, is like we get into these opportunities, whether, you know, it's a big retreat, or it's like a boot camp, or it's a conversation or a workshop. It can be anything. And then all of a sudden we're back in the real world, and it's like, now what? And it can feel like we're regressing because all of a sudden we're in the same looping patterns. We're around the same people and eating the same foods we used to eat. And we're doing all these things, and then we can slowly feel like we're regressing. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of teachers will do like retreats that take a week, or like pull you completely out of your normal everyday activity in some place that is completely disconnected from your home. And it's to try and get you to fully disconnect, so then you can play and alchemize a different way of being. And so then here I was coming home, and I got my first little warning. And that was on the plane ride between Santorini and Athens. And I was sitting between these 6 women that were all traveling together, these 5 women that were traveling together. And for some reason, it was like 3 of them, one beside me, and I'm in the middle. And I was like, interesting. But it was like super negative. And so what was happening was all the conversations were like, oh, but this happened and this happened. And it was like super negative. And so I went from being like, we just manifested and took a helicopter off of an island, to what is this? And it was like this really dense energy. And so a couple of things that happened on the plane. We got off the plane and I was like super like just wanted off. Like I was like, well, I'm just done with them. And I realized I was being not super judgy, but I was judging. I was absolutely judging. And all of a sudden I was like, I can't pull out of this. I'm totally judging these women of being negative. And I was like, how are you going to handle this? So I got off the plane, met up with the girls. They had been sitting at the front of the plane, and we met up, and I was like struggling to shake it off. So we moved through the day. I kind of pull out of it a bit, and then we get on to the first flight out of Athens. Now everybody kind of splits up. I'm the only person coming back to Canada, and I'm heading to Montreal. And I get a lovely woman beside me. I end up sitting and writing, and I'm super grounded. Audrey and I had had a great night the night before, just chatting. And I felt like so grounded, and I rebooted and reconnected again just to how I would be feeling while we were at the retreat. And then I'd felt this feeling of regression while we were on that flight, and then pulling back out and realizing I was simply needing to just set the intention to let it all go. And my job had been to just sit there and watch and not do anything. Like, I don't need to change them. I don't need to listen to it. I don't need to absorb it. I can just watch and let them just experience themselves. I don't have to be involved. And that's not my normal. So it was really difficult. And I was like, oh, so I felt like I regressed. Got on this next plane and I'm feeling super grounded. As soon as Audrey had gotten on her plane earlier, I sat even in the airport and pulled out my laptop and just started writing. And I started working really deeply onto my book again. Got onto the plane, boom, set up again, was writing. And probably that flight was like 10 hours. So I was writing for probably 5 hours that I just started getting into flow. And then I had this lovely conversation with the lady beside me. We talked for a couple of hours, and then I went back to writing again. And then I get on to the next flight, very short changeover, Montreal to Canada to Vancouver. And again, I get sat down, lady beside me, lovely. Guys behind us are like everything negative about every flight, negative about traveling, negative. And I was just like, ugh. And I just wanted to facepalm. Like, I was just like, this is, and then all of a sudden it was like, let it go. Just let it go. People are going to be going through this. And as long as you hold your energy, you can alchemize it. And so it was this realization that a lot of the time what we see as our regression is actually an opportunity. And we have these opportunities that we can, because we get awareness. So the beautiful thing is the retreat, the workshop, the boot camp, they give us an opportunity to have self-awareness. And it's the self-awareness that allows us to actually alchemize what we're learning. Oh yes, absolutely, Joanne. We get to alchemize these experiences. And so know that when we come back into a familiar place, so all of a sudden I'm on these planes and I'm coming back into home. And for me, home doesn't feel dense. I get back to Vancouver. Some people really struggle coming back onto Vancouver Island. It is literally made up of quartz crystal. People really struggle with the energy here. I don't. When I land here, I'm like, oh, I'm home. And it feels absolutely fine. My home itself is very sacred. And I work very hard I don't work very hard, but I hold the space in there to remain clean. And our home is very sacred space for both my husband and I. Mike and I both make sure that it stays in a certain way. And so coming back into here, it's like, how are you going to hold this energy and then come back into your environment? And some of it takes us to a bit of work. We need to kind of shift. And so what can happen often is we want to shrink to fit in. We want to, because everybody else remembers us as the person that we were when we left. And now all of a sudden it's like, how I'm going to hold these, I want to have these big conversations about what I just went through, and they're just being here kind of in the same cycle. And so instead of shrinking, what we really need to do isn't also jamming it down their throat, but it's like getting an opportunity just to hold and allow them to experience it. And so as I was planning this talk, this was going to be a piece I was going to come on with a few days ago. And I got this really cool opportunity last night where I was sitting with, I'd been back to work, got home Monday, Tuesday I gave myself the day to have jet lag, thank goodness, and I slept and kind of settled back into home. And then yesterday was back to work again. And I finished my day with a board meeting. And so I'm on board for WBN, Women's Business Network. And we were sitting in at the end, we had this conversation come up that was quite touchy, because it was something that is more political. And so, everybody's like, we're discussing this and whether or not we should do something or not do something. And I held my line. And so what was really fascinating for me is I hadn't realized what I was doing. And I was just sitting and I was letting everybody know, like, this isn't something I'm comfortable with and here's why, but I'm open to your feedback. And so as we were sitting and talking about it, I was just got more and more and more grounded. And then I could say the reason I'm not okay with this is I feel like what we're needing to create here is connection and community. And we're supposed to be, joining arms as women and lifting each other up. And what we're talking about here is something that actually cultivates separation. And so rather than doing this, or if we're going to do this, I'm going to need somebody to explain to me why we're doing it and how it benefits the people that are within the group. And not just the people within the group, but then ripples out into our families, into our environments, into our communities, into our workspaces. And so how can we remain true to ourselves as we're doing this work? And so as we settled out, everybody's like, yeah, let's take a break from this. Like, let's think on it. Like, I'd like to research it. Some good points were made out. And I just said, like, we've gone through this long without making any changes. I just need us to be super clear on why we're going to make a change. And what was fascinating is it was a conversation that could have gotten, like, it was a touchy conversation. You get into anything that's political, anything that's social, like you start getting into some touchy places where people have very, very, very different opinions. And what was fascinating is we finished the conversation. The person who had brought it up to the forefront, I had handled it in a way that allowed her to feel completely safe and to just simply think, like, oh yeah, why are we doing this? Is this just following what everybody else is doing right now? And then what was awesome is all of a sudden all these people started coming and talking to me and saying, thank you. Thank you for holding that space. Thank you for allowing us to think about this. Thank you for, and then, some people gave me a hug because they were like, thank you so much. This is a touchy conversation. And you just held that zone so well of saying, like, for me, as a spiritual teacher, I cannot do anything that cultivates separation. And all of a sudden I realized after they'd gone, I had been able to hold what I've been shown I was struggling with, which was negativity and diversity, like creating actually division. And all of a sudden I got this opportunity to hold the space and integrate it and be able to alchemize this energy in a different way. And so as we're going through these changes in our life, if you're going through a spiritual journey, if maybe you've joined this group because this is just the beginning of it, you just want to explore, you've just been watching and seeing, like, what does this mean for me? Whatever that is your journey, you can alchemize. We can slowly make these little micro shifts. If you've done any work with me, any of my boot camps, any of my classes or courses, I talk about micro shifting a lot because we don't need to blow up our life. We don't need to quit our job and break up our families or do any of these things. Often what we need to do is little tiny steps, little tiny micro shifts. I didn't need to blow up a whole meeting and create chaos. I could actually just sit there super grounded and just hold. And this is my position. This is why. However, I am totally open to getting feedback. And maybe you're going to give me something I don't know. And we can, even though I got this first feeling of that I was regressing coming back home, all of a sudden I got back here. And by saying, thank you for showing me where I have work to do, I grounded back again and then instead could start to create this alchemy. And what I mean by alchemy is that shift where we are shifting from I am my own person that is separate, and I'm my body and I'm my mind, and I'm all these things that create my suffering. And so I'm all these things that cause suffering, to the alchemy of I'm none of those things. And I am a soul, a divine aspect of source of creation. And all of these things are just roles, they're just experiences. And so we start to create that shift, to change, water into wine is, alchemy, to change, metal into gold. We're alchemizing, we're making this shift into something, or we're shifting from some things into no thing. And so we're beginning this process, and that is really the alchemy of what we're doing. And so know that when you're coming out of these places, some places are going to feel foreign. It's going to be like, I don't really fit here anymore, because you've made all these changes and everybody else is still how they were when you left. But the more that we make those changes and we stay in those spaces, we give an opportunity. Our vibrational frequency scientifically has shifted. We've started to raise our vibrational frequency, and that's going to impact those around us. And so if we can hold and just let ourselves quietly simmer, and so you think, like, as we're cooking, we don't need to be on a boil. we're just quietly simmering, and we give time for everything else around us to alchemize, to find its new homeostasis with the changes that we're experiencing. And then people can start to shift around us. We can have different conversations, and then suddenly somebody, as they were leaving last night, one person who's extremely works heavy within the energetics, is a beautiful healer, and she just said to me as they were leaving, she's like, there's something about you, always have a lot of light, but there's something about you that's just like clear. It's so much brighter, and it's really beautiful. And so then I was saying about this feeling very grounded and expanded, this feeling of expansion, of ascension, but not wanting to put words to it, because it's like when we add words to it, ego lives in the words. And so I was like, I'm getting this sense of it, but I just need to sit and let it simmer for a little while longer. But by us just letting ourselves simmer, not needing to tell everybody about it, we give our opportunity just to let it grow, to take root within us. So keep that in mind, like as you're moving through things, whether that's reading a big book or taking a course or working with a coach or anything else, you're on your own healing journey, that as you're going through it, it may at times feel like you're regressing. You slip back into an old habit of conversations with your parents or with your kids or with your friends. And then all of a sudden you get this moment where you get to say, hold on a minute. I'm really working on being a more positive person. I don't want to talk about anybody anymore. And instead of the person, they might have a hard time with it, or they might come back and go, thank goodness, me too. And so then you can support each other on making these shifts and changes in your life. So know that when you come back or when you come into life and you feel like you've made some shifts and changes, it's okay that it feels a little weird or a little uncomfortable because you've changed and it's not going to fit exactly the same way. But there is a point where we have to have trust and faith in what we're creating, that life around us is going to shift and adjust. Sometimes it's going to mean people leave, and that's okay, because it doesn't mean that they'll leave forever. Sometimes they're just going to leave for a little bit and then they're going to come back. They just need time to alchemize themselves. And so it doesn't always mean forever. Sometimes it just means for now. Maybe it means you couldn't have acclimated to this new way of being and had them stay in your life. Sometimes people need to go so that you can finish your work and shift and adjust, and they can do theirs, and then you can come back together. Or not. Sometimes people just go, and we're going to grieve them. It's sad. That part of our life, that connection is gone, and that's just the way it goes. Sometimes people aren't meant to be in our life forever, and that's okay. And it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to miss people, and it's okay to dislike, and still be on our remembering, on the unlearning, on the alchemizing into you, the beautiful soul that you really are. So just keep that in mind as we're going into these things. Sometimes going back feels like a slide, and it's not. It's a shifting, it's an adjusting that is trying to happen for us. I wrote down, you're not broken, you're just becoming more honest. And so, noticing what I notice, the mind wants to rush, it wants to jump back into work, it wants to jump back into the way that, I've always been. I got to do this, I got to do this. And it was really cool because every time it was like stillness, quiet. You're going to get it all done. Everything's going to work. What doesn't fit anymore? Are you sure you still need to be doing that? Are we going to still do Facebook Lives? Absolutely. Is the community still the right thing? Absolutely. Like, let's build it. Let's grow it. Let's create a wave of people that are coming back to love. We're moving away from fear and we're moving back towards love, back towards trust, back towards, connection. That's my dream for all of us, myself included, is to come back into this feeling of interconnectedness, into community. So yes, then it's like, okay, how does it feel with the podcast? Yes, that feels like a fit. How does it feel with the YouTube? There's a couple of shifts that are going to be being made there and it's just about me being me and not trying to be who I was. So, will it shift a bit? Yeah, it feels like there's things that are continuing to shift and grow, and that's okay. So if you're feeling that way in your life right now, that's okay. It's okay for things that were really fitting before to not quite fit. But it might not be that we need to burn it to the ground. It might be, which is funny because that's like July's theme, is it might be that we just need to shift. We might need to just pivot it a little bit. So is it a micro shift I need to make, or is there a big jump I need to make? And so for me, it was like just letting myself take the space to know what I need to do, and to not just jump back into the old way of being. And so to allow ourselves this time to acclimate. And it's funny, I wrote the myth of applying the work. And so rushing to integrate. And so talking about that so far, and then over explaining our changes, which has been, something I've done for a long time. And then performing alignment. So these 3 things I wrote down because this is places I've been before, where I was always feeling like I needed to explain myself. I was needing to see, I'm doing the work. And it can feel that way because people around us are still treating us like the person that we were. And it is sometimes the hardest work is to just hold the line, to just be and trust. Just keep being yourself and trust that those that need to go will go. And sometimes it might be that you are the one that needs to make those things go, not just be, giving away our power to other people. Or it may be that they just need a little bit of time to just notice. And then they'll just start shifting as you hold. They will automatically, things will start shifting around you. They acclimate to the frequency. And the one that's holding the highest frequency is the one that, wins, so to speak. So who's most dedicated to their energy? And I always say, I'm more dedicated to my energy than you are dedicated to yours. So I'm going to hold, and I'm going to get you to shift in this higher place, then I'm going to get sunk down into this lower place. And on those planes, that didn't happen. And so all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, are you committed to your frequency? And so for me, it was like, no, you need to hold. And thank goodness I was given that before going into a conversation last night, with, I think there was a lot of people there, 17 women there, and to hold that space and go, this is what I need us to think about, and just trust and hold it. And so we don't need to perform alignment. We need to align and then just hold that alignment. And it is very personal, and it is meant to be private. It's meant to be shared within that inner circle. And so that inner circle might be you and your spouse, or you and a friend. It might be just you for a little while. It might be you and this community here, or you and a coach, or a spiritual guide that you are working with. So just know that it may be in the beginning, it's private. It needs to be kept within a smaller circle as it gets to take root. If you think of ourselves as we're changing, there are these beautiful flowers. And in some ways, they're super fragile. And it's because we're planting them in concrete. We're in the middle of this life that is in chaos, this world. And we need to let them get their roots in. But if you watch those little flowers that grow in cracks of sidewalk, how difficult they are to pull out, they are tenacious and they're resilient. And so keep that in there, but we need to just give them the chance to get their roots in. Once they're in, we can hold. And so this is where sometimes what we need to do is not explain our change or over explain our change, but to actually just be it, to just let it simmer, take root, and get super curious and quiet with ourselves to allow it the space it needs to grow into what you're meant to be. And it's not that we're really, and there's words we use all the time like healing. It's well, do we actually need to heal, or is it really a releasing? Well, it's a releasing, actually. It's more of a detoxification than it is a healing. But we detoxify, and the detoxification heals. So it's this really interesting place of words. My favorite quote is still, silence is the language of God. Insert whatever word you want. Silence is the language of God, and everything else is a cheap imitation. And so that's where I say, go quiet. Get really quiet in here and know I will always be a safe space for you. So if you want to chat about it, you want to like just talk, I'm like, that's like my happy place, is to have these kinds of conversations with people. You can give me a ring or throw me a message, and I will happily, chat with you about what is going on, and so that you can find that root within yourself and then keep settling and keep moving, keep getting into that quietness, because that's what we are designed for, is to get a little still so that we can allow things to take root for ourselves. And what alchemy really looks like. So saying no without guilt, and moving slower without shame, and trusting your yes before it's logical. And it's funny. So I write these things as places where I've struggled. So where have I struggled in the past after doing a bunch of work, and these are my big ones, is saying no without guilt, and having to come back this time and saying no to making some plans. I just needed to acclimate. I just needed to be here. And so making big plans with everybody and going and doing things on the long weekend, I was like, I can do small little events with people, go do lunch, go do a walk, but going away and doing a big weekend, I was just like, I just need to be. And so, and allowing myself to move slower without shame. So not needing to hustle, and really trying to break this hustle culture. And if you knew me in my previous life, I was a driving force. And I realized that I still, am in this place of expanding and doing these things, but it's without the hustle. Now it's about flow. And we use that a lot. My business partner always says, okay, no more hustle, flow. Flow, not hustle. No more hustle, flow. Like, we keep going back to it because it's like such a programmed thing in our world to drive, to do more, to be more, and instead to just alchemize. And so just allowing ourselves to acclimate into this new way of being, and trusting your yes before it's logical. And that can even be the no. So trusting ourselves before logic, like not looking to the mind to explain things for us. And so the questions I wrote down here, and they're questions I needed for myself, and so I'll put them forward to you guys, which is, 1, where are you trying to prove you're healed? And so that might be with family, it might be with work people, it might be with a loved one, friends, but where are you trying to prove that you're healed? And then the second question is, where are you still waiting for permission to be different? Because that is one that I waited for a long time, was for somebody to give me permission so that I could still feel safe and being loved, and realizing the person I'd been waiting for the whole entire time was me. And it's you that you're waiting for permission from. Not me, not anybody else. You. You're the one you need to give permission to. You're the one that you need to get permission from. So notice if there's a place where we are outsourcing our power. Because when we're waiting for somebody else to give it to us, we're giving them our power. And you are a divine being. You are not meant to give your power to other people. They have their own. And you're not meant to take power from others. You've got your own. And we have plenty and enough when we remove the obstacles and imbalances that stop us from being in that flow. So it is very much about that detoxing, that releasing and letting go, so that we can expand into the flow of life that we're meant to. So my closing today, reentry doesn't have to be a performance. It can be a practice, a devotion, and a rebecoming. So share in the comments, what part of you are you choosing to keep sacred? And that might be on your return, on your coming back. What part of you are you choosing to keep sacred? I expanded my morning ritual. It was a challenge that we had at the retreat. So I do my morning protein coffee and I do spiritual reading. I just started the Bhagavad Gita for daily living. And I challenged myself to it because there's some things within the way that Eknath lives, just with being, he's a vegetarian and lives a very specific type of lifestyle. And it's not a lifestyle that actually fits me. And so I purposely am moving into this while holding my own space and honoring him his space. So I purposely am doing work with a teacher that challenges some things for me to hold and not think I need to be just like somebody else. And then we were challenged to bring in two other things. So one was what we call morning writing pages. So we just free write for 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, where we just could be like, I don't know what I'm writing here. But it's funny because it's quickly become like feelings and thoughts and things that have come up while I was sleeping that are available to me. So the more that we do it, the more that it flows. And then going into intention and visualization work. So what do I want for myself for this next stage of my life? What does that look like? What are my big goals and dreams? And then moving through a process that our coach gave us of like writing it out and then feeling it in our bodies and lifting our vibrational frequencies to match what we are desiring. So that's kind of my new morning ritual practice before I go and move my body. So what are the rituals? What are the things that you want to bring in for yourself to support yourself to getting a little more quiet, to getting a little bit more alchemized into this new way of being? And I would love to hear from you guys. So I hope this all brought some value and made sense. And I am excited to be home and be with you guys. I hope you have a fantastic day. And I look forward to hearing what comes up for you guys. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.